Pocas veces hemos tenido la oportunidad de documentar una aventura desde el inicio hasta el fin. Y este es el día cero de esta aventura. Estamos en el nido en Polanco realizando la primera de las actividades previas a todo lo demás que va a suceder. Si algo ha caracterizado a través de los años a la marca de las 3 franjas, es que sí, ellos te dan las prendas, pero tú le pones tu propio sabor. Y venimos a personalizar lo que nos vamos a llevar a la segunda parte de esta aventura. Después de poquito más de 14 horas de vuelo, con una conexión en Ámsterdam, llegamos a la ciudad de Nuremberg. Como pueden ver, si alguno de ustedes, yo estoy seguro de que varios, han salido o han brincado de este lado del charco, saben cómo es una ciudad europea. Es básicamente, una es muy próxima a la otra. La neta es muy diferente al ritmo al que estamos acostumbrados en la Ciudad de México o cualquier compa en Latinoamérica, güey. Donde sales y puedes ver un chingo de gente en las aceras, güey. Todos los comercios reventando, música por todos lados. Este es un pedo diferente, porque aparte llegamos justo este lunes cuando se supone que es día feriado dentro de la ciudad de Nuremberg. Calles vacías, no hay tráfico, no está la arrolladora saliendo de ninguna de estas ventanas. Pero, ¿qué es lo que hacen 2 mexicanos entonces aquí? Estamos solamente a más o menos 20 o 25 minutos de Herzogenaurach, que es la ciudad donde está el campus oficial, la central, digamos, de Adidas. Home of Classics, o como le vamos a llamar ahora, la casa de los clásicos, es esta campaña que Adidas ha estado empujando desde hace unos años para acá. De lo que se trata es recordarnos a todos cómo un par de tenis simple y blanco pueda trascender décadas de moda, movimientos culturales y de todos modos seguir siendo totalmente fresco y vigente. Y ni siquiera te estoy hablando del deporte. Y cuando en la biblioteca tienes más de un solo clásico, era hora de venir a conocerlos a su casa. Y va a comenzar oficialmente el día de mañana con nuestra visita a Herzogenaurach. No solamente para ver el headquarters de Adidas, sino también vamos a poderle meter nuestras pequeñas manitas al archivo histórico que tienen aquí. De Nesa, Alemania, yo soy su homie el Poxte y este es un nuevo episodio de Late Stop. Acabamos de entrar al primer edificio y lo que les debo decir es que esta es una de las sorpresas más grandes que hemos tenido últimamente, güey. Ver Late Stop en la pantalla junto a Sneakers Brasil. Lawrence, la estrella que es. Mi hermano, ¿cómo estás, güey?
¿Todo bien?
¿Cuál ha sido la expectativa durante todo lo previo a este viaje?
Pues para mí ha sido increíble porque Adidas siempre ha sido de mis marcas favoritas que yo usaba de adolescente, Sambas, Campus, Stan Smith, todos Superstars.
Los clásicos.
Obvio. Y llegar aquí, entrar y ver esta bienvenida.
Sí.
Un sueño.
Es un sueño, es más que un sueño. A mí casi se me sale la lágrima. Me encanta ver cómo el campus está como bien, o sea, por lo menos lo que he visto hasta ahorita,
claro,
es como muy welcoming para la gente,
claro,
como de tú vienes de fuera, ven, entra a nuestro universo, porque de inmediato entras y esto es totalmente Adidas. Cada uno de los detalles que hemos visto hasta ahorita nos ha llevado como que poco a poco a adentrarnos al mood del diseño de todo, ¿no? ¿Qué esperas ver acá ahorita?
Pues quiero que me sorprendan. La verdad es que expectativas cero porque sé que voy a salir increíblemente sorprendido.
Yo también estoy a 2 de llorar, pero vamos de una vez a darle, ¿no? Una cosa es ver una marca en un aparador, ver un par de tenis, una playera, una sudadera en un aparador. Y otra cosa es totalmente distinta cuando vienes al lugar donde todo esto se desarrolla. Y que no solamente es donde trabaja, come y vive esta gente de Adidas, sino que aquí es donde todas las ideas se fabrican y a partir de aquí se va alrededor del mundo. A este edificio se le llama Arena y es para recordarnos a todos que somos parte del juego. Si ven esta entrada, esto nos va a recordar a la entrada de los estadios. De ese lado vamos a encontrar el track. Está formado como si fuera una pista para correr. Esta parte está hecha exactamente para recordarte como si fueras a subir ya a tu asiento dentro de un estadio. Pero en realidad pues son oficinas corporativas. De hecho, después del segundo nivel puedes ver cómo allá arriba están los jefes de jefes. Pero de todos modos vamos a ver a dónde nos dejan entrar, dónde nos dejan grabar y qué es lo que podemos ver. Yo sé que a ustedes les choca cuando se los digo yo, pero could you tell us what's the correct pronunciation for Adidas?
Adidas,
What's the name of the place?
the city.
Yes.
So it's Herzogenaurach.
I don't know if you're going to tell us a little later, but the meaning of the word, how it came to be.
So Adidas comes from Adolf Dassler. So at the beginning, he wanted to call the company Adas, so for Adolf Dassler. But when he went to register, he refused. They refused because it was too close to another company called Ada. And so he was like, it's not a problem. And he took out a pen out of his pocket and added an I. And it worked perfectly because his nickname was Adi. So Adidas.
Seguíamos viendo lugares diferentes dentro del campus y este fue uno de los que más me gustó. El estadio se siente en una vibra completamente diferente. Aparte de que está rodeado por una pista, el pasto, nos dijeron que teníamos acceso absolutamente a todo, menos al pasto. El pasto no podíamos pisarlo. En el pasto juegan profesionales, así que el pasto no lo pisen. Lo más chingón del campus es el enorme tamaño que tiene. Si tienes que ir de un lado para otro y tienes una junta en los próximos 5 minutos, lo que tienes que hacer es tomar una bicicleta y rodar de un lado a otro. Súper chingón ver a los compas fuera de contexto. Yo he visto a Tavo, a Lorenz, a toda esta banda caminando, pero nunca los había visto sobre una bicicleta y verlos fuera de algo normal, eso fue súper cool. Este es el edificio donde sucede absolutamente toda la magia. Imaginen todo lo que está pasando dentro de cada uno de estos cubículos y oficinas. La sala de creativos es uno de mis lugares favoritos, definitivamente. Cada que me preguntaban, oye, ¿cuál fue lo que más te gustó? Creo que este lugar me encanta, porque aparte está abierto a absolutamente todo el personal. Puede ser de contabilidad, te gustan los tenis, vas, se te ocurre una idea para una playera, un par de tenis, puedes tomar un montón de modelos, pedir ahí mismo que los técnicos te corten esta parte y esta parte, armar el que tú quieres. Y hay etiquetas y todo el branding necesario para que ahí mismo hagas por lo menos en corto una adaptación muy cercana a lo que tienes en la cabeza. Solo imagínate. La inspiración, como siempre digo, te tiene que agarrar chambeando. Y una vez que estás ahí, y si de repente dices, güey, quedaría bien chingón con tal o cual etiqueta, solo tienes que ir a agarrarla y ponérsela. Ey, y lo más chido, cada uno de los detalles que le podrías poner a tu par de tenis está ahí disponible. ¿Quieres una suela impresa en 3D? ¿Quieres una etiqueta en específico? Cada uno de esos juguetes están a la mano para que se lo puedas poner a tu par de tenis o tu idea y de ahí que salga al mundo. Cuando estás inmerso en un lugar como este, en lo único que puedes pensar es en la historia, en toda la gente que ha caminado a través de esos pasillos y en cómo ahora tú eres parte de eso.
So basically the one exhibition is a corridor, so on this side and on the other side the Walk of Fame. And here you have stories and products that really mark the Adidas history, so milestone basically.
El museo está lleno de un montón de piezas icónicas, muchas de ellas pertenecientes a las principales venas de la marca. Correr, el básquetbol y el fútbol. Son cositas que, aun cuando no te guste el fútbol, de cualquier manera pertenecen a tu cultura. Vimos prendas de cada uno de estos deportes. Muy chingón ver que el fútbol tiene un lugar tan especial dentro de la colección de Adidas, pero también hay apartados de básquetbol, que aunque si bien son menos los apartados de básquetbol, de cualquier manera puedes encontrar pares que representan ese deporte ahí. Junto con el básquetbol también puedes encontrar un montón de siluetas pertenecientes al mundo del running. piezas con las que no solamente se han ganado maratones, sino también con las que empezó la historia de las tres franjas. Junto a estas piezas de calzado también podíamos encontrar jerseys, que definieron momentos históricos dentro de la cultura del deporte. Obviamente no puedes caminar por estos dos pasillos y solamente interpretar todo como si fueran piezas simples de ropa y calzado. Cada uno de los momentos que visitamos a través de las vitrinas muestran el desarrollo y diferentes momentos icónicos de la historia del deporte. Muestran también sucesos deportivos e icónicos para el deporte a lo largo del tiempo. Y lo más chido es ponerse a pensar qué de lo que tenemos ahora va a estar detrás de las vitrinas para futuras generaciones. Y también te das cuenta de la importancia histórica que tienen estos pasillos. Ahorita estamos en un área conocida como el Podium, donde no solamente puedes ver una de las pantallas más grandes en Europa, esta sección, por ejemplo, hecha solamente de Stan Smiths, que es donde se proyectan. Topen, de este lado puedes ver un montón de proyectores diferentes y cada uno de los proyectores llena una de las áreas de proyección. Dentro de este edificio no solamente hay una exhibición, sino también tienen un showroom y un estudio de grabación donde puede venir diferentes personalidades a hacer contenido para Adidas. Un viaje lleno de sorpresas obviamente tenía que incluir el clima. Ayer pasamos por prácticamente todas las estaciones, menos la nieve, y aunque de manera muy breve tuvimos la experiencia completa. Un recorrido por los highlights históricos de la marca y la oportunidad de comprar en la tienda insignia y en el outlet. Y aunque comprar sí está chido, lo que realmente te llevas de cada uno de estos lugares es la experiencia. Conocer nuevas ideas y conectar con la gente. Y eso es precisamente lo que vamos a hacer el día de hoy. Así que vamos a darle. Okay, Ricardo, for people that don't know you, could you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Ricardo from Brazil, and I run Sneakers BR, Sneakers BR.
What do you think about the trip so far?
Amazing. This is an amazing experience to see where everything happened.
What are your expectations for today that we're going to have a chance to go inside the archive?
Yeah, the Adidas archive is like such an iconic place. So every time you get to see a video with the gloves and people like handing historic products. So I think it's gonna be the best part of this amazing trip.
Mike, no más, ¿de dónde nos venimos a encontrar? Cabrón. Primero, ¿cuál es tu primera impresión de Herzog?
No mames, está bien bonita la ciudad, ¿no? Me parece que está súper cuidada, limpia como de muchas partes de Europa. Bien padre, güey. Y pues nada, encontrarnos aquí está cabrón, güey.
Está bien chingón.
The archive is not yet, it's behind the blue door. So.
Oh, okay.
And first of all, one of the most important items, you get the gloves.
The gloves.
Yes. They're already collector's items. The only thing is, like, just to let you know, in case you're using your smartphone, you need to get your thumb up to push.
Oh,
thumb.
okay,
That's
okay,
the only
okay,
thing.
okay,
That's
okay.
the next edition we need to get from archive gloves. I'll let you go in first. And you can already feel it, it's getting colder in there. We have 18 degrees in here, 55% of humidity, because we have a so-called mixed climate in here.
Oh, okay.
Because you will see it, we're storing apparel, we're storing shoes, we have balls, so everything, and that's the perfect climate you have for those objects to be preserved. Otherwise, of course, you see it over there on the shelf as in case like they are stored under the wrong conditions with too much heat or too much too dry, too wet. This is what's happening. And the moment it starts, you can only, crumbling and everything. It's also destroying the other parts of the shoes. The thing is, in the moment it started, you can only slow it down. You can never stop it. The moment it has started, so
poetic.
So first question.
Yeah.
The perfect temperature to keep like a sneaker room or a storage room would be?
We have at the moment 18 degrees in here. The most important thing is a stable temperature, that it's not that you don't have variations in between. Like if you have one day you have 25, then you go down to 15, then you go up again. That's the worst. So.
O sea, la experiencia de entrar al archivo, de ver todas las piezas tan icónicas, todos los clásicos, de dónde nace. Vimos Super Grip, Superstar, vimos Forum, vimos Stan Smith,
ZX.
Vimos ZX. Me pareció increíble, pero increíble.
A mí me encanta, primero, el conocimiento que tiene la persona detrás de esto.
También.
Prácticamente, o sea, decíamos, decíamos samba y ¡pum! Sale con el par, ya lo tiene, ya sabe dónde está guardado, qué colores hubo disponibles y los materiales que salieron. Me encanta ese pedo y también que esté al tanto de como de detalles pequeños que lo hacen diferente en diferentes países.
Sí, total. Y bueno, obviamente estamos con guantes porque tenemos que tener súper cuidado para tocar absolutamente todos los tenis que nos mostraron.
As you can see, it doesn't look that huge. We have around 40,000 products in here. 40,000, yes. And growing. So we have another storage with up to 80,000 products. And you see also we have special packaging. Those are acid-free boxes because paper also has acid, so that's why we store everything in acid-free boxes. All shoes are laced, and they have, of course, also acid-free paper in the shoe, that it's not collapsing. And that's the oldest shoe we have. Now you can guess from which year. So if we go back to our history and we talk about our founder, Adidas, he started to produce shoes in the old laundry room of his mother. In 1920, he was born in 1900 here in Herzog, and he was a trained baker. That was his real profession. But he was always passionate about sports. Sports shoes were like specialized sports shoes were not existing at that time. Then, of course, he founded the company together with his brother, the Brother Dassler Shoe Company, and that was one of the first shoes they produced. Still in the laundry room, because they moved to the factory in 1927.
2 years before they already made it.
Yeah. And that's, you see, it's a track and field spike. If you look at the spikes, you see they're like very long. That's the only thing that was not handmade. That was made by a befriended blacksmith. But you see, at that time they were running on ash tracks, cinder tracks. That's why you needed those very, very long spikes. Yes, and then I show you, which of course shows our iconic trademark. That's one of the first prototypes with the 3 stripes. And our 3 stripes are only there for visibility reasons. They're just a trademark. They're for visibility reasons, nothing else. Never. Only also at the beginning, they never had a function.
Me quedo con una experiencia de esas que son para el resto de la vida, de esas cosas que no se olvidan. Y creo que también hay un tema del aprendizaje. Todos los que estamos metidos en esta estupidez o maravilla de coleccionar, cuando mi esposa me dice, oye, ¿hasta cuándo seguimos guardando en la casa? No podemos hacer crecer más el apartamento. Bueno, están estos espacios y cómo cada uno va teniendo sus propios museos en la mente, en el corazón, en la casa, en algún lugar, y atesorar esos pequeños detalles, que al final creo que de eso es lo que se trata todo este juego, de los clásicos, los detalles que podemos ir conversando cada uno. Creo que va un poco por ahí, pero es una experiencia para toda la vida.
And there you see, of course, a little bit of our history, and one of my favorite shoes I have to show you, which is the hottest sneaker in the market at the moment. That's the Samba. That's the first Samba. That's the first Samba. It was made, you see with that special, so made for icy and snowy pitches. So it's a big myth, it was not made for the World Cup 1950 in Brazil. So, yeah, because usually I don't think that there's a lot of snow in Brazil.
No.
Yeah. But it never had it did not have a name at that time. It was just called a special football boot, but it was named the Samba shoe by the press because the teams that played in that shoe played so good football, like they were like very easy going onto the icy pitches, like it looks like they were dancing. Yeah, that's why it's named a Samba shoe.
Okay, and it has the original branding, right?
Yes, the higher Ds, which come originally from the high jump, the poles you have in the high jump, that's where it comes from.
Oh, okay.
That's why you also see that there's always a track and field spike in between, because it's from the high jump. And of course, I think you all know this version of the samba, which
There
is of
you
course.
go.
But usually I show that one first because. And that's also when you look at. We will also then talk about the gazelle, like this tea-toe, which is now called the tea-toe, is of course very iconic for indoor shoes to get the special protection. That's why Handball Spezial has it, the gazelle has it, the samba has it, and that's also the iconic samba sole with a 3-part sole for indoor sports, indoor football. So samba is an indoor. And then, of course, another very iconic product also made here in Germany is the gazelle. You see an iteration of different gazelles. And that was the first one that we have in here in the archive, which is from 1966 as a training shoe. And you see there's only 2 colorways that were available. Red for indoor training, blue for outdoor training. And you also see that that's a later version of the gazelle, because if you grab that one and you look at the sole, you see that there's a herringbone sole still underneath, which also, for example, a Superstar had. And in the early 70s, we added the iconic hexagon sole to it. So that's the later version. And there, in 1968, there was a special gazelle made, the Mexicana, for the Mexico Olympic Games. Yeah. Yeah.
Signed.
That one is signed because it was worn by the German rowing team in '68. So the whole German rowing team was signing that one. They won gold in the rowing 8. So also one of my favorite collections, of course, are old bags. They were also made, there was a very special model. It was called the shoe carry bag because it was only there to carry dirty shoes after sports, especially after football. And you also see, of course, the higher Ds and the branding.
Oh, okay. This is you're using this logo. This is from the 80s.
No, 70s.
70s.
I will tell you the story about the truffle when we go over to apparel.
Okay.
Tennis rackets.
Of course. That's so fun. Bowling bag.
There's.
Oh, those are so
Taco size, exactly.
Taco size.
Perfect. Taco size. Perfect.
No. Vas por
That
los
was
tacos,
way before
sales y mira.
smartphones were existing.
Suadero y al
So you
paso.
see the size. That's the oldest, one of the oldest tracksuits we have. That's the Franz Beckenbauer tracksuit, which was also then worn at the 1970 World Cup in Mexico. And you also see, if you look at the trousers, you see, of course, where the name suit comes from, and with the straps, which we also used later for the blue version, and the zipper.
Oh, look at that.
1972, Munich. And
Eso está super Gucci. That's super.
you see where they get the inspiration from.
Gucci is super.
And that's the female version, that's May green. Men's were lavender blue. And of course you see the truffle over here. That was also the tracksuit where we presented the truffle to the public in '72 for the first time. And of course we are the brand with the 3 stripes. The wife of our former CEO of Adidas, Kate Dassler, she loved floral elements. Number 3, floral elements, truffle, 3 foiled. And then of course we also in the '70s we started to produce jerseys.
Mira este. Oh,
That's Chile or Argentina.
Where's Brazil?
Where's Brazil?
I'm sorry for that.
Brazil?
I'm sorry.
Where's Brazil?
Check out the Argentina. Oh.
98. You see, of course, also how the shapes
Yes.
of and the sizes changed of football jerseys.
Yeah, they're so small and slim.
Yeah,
And they started
like
getting
80s,
baggy.
yes, baggy, and now they're getting slimmer again. So,
Oh, okay.
or tracksuit could also get a little bit more fashionable. Real leather. The Superstar tracksuit.
Oh, can I see that?
Of course. You can also come in here, no worries.
Oh, I didn't know if I could step inside
Yeah,
or
of
not.
course, of course.
Check it out.
You don't have to hide.
Wait, how do you decide? How do you guys decide what goes in the archive? Or
We have all, of course, we have all the balls from the World Cup. Here, that's not played, but we have all of them played. Also from the recent World Cup is already in the archive. Of course, everything that is athlete worn, that is related to an event, that is, of course, limited editions, special collaborations, new materials, new designs, new technology. Oh, okay. So prototypes are also stored in here. So everything that is relevant for the brand's history, but also the product history. Oh, okay. So
this is amazing ball in terms of design, but it's not another good memory to Brazilian.
I know.
Especially a Brazilian.
With a German. Should I tell you what? We kept seven balls of that game. Yeah. Sorry for that.
Oh, there's the, check it out, the Azteca.
And the Argentina over there is like... Sorry, but we still 5 times.
¿Ya viste este?
Yeah, as you see, that was made by, maybe no, it was a special case, made limited edition for the 2018. We still have one table left. I don't know. Yes, it's always hard to leave. I know. Before we go to the last table, I will open the secret door.
The boxes.
Our old shoebox. I would just move it a little bit because then we get more light in there.
Oh, estas son las cajas originales.
And you see, of course, that's one of the oldest boxes, 1956. Adidas with the 3 stripes, mit den 3 Riemen, the fastest shoe in the world. You see, of course, the same design as the bags because it was to put shoes in. And you also see, if you look at the cutouts on the side, to give ventilation to the shoe. And you see, of course, also there we have an old Samba box, a Brasilia box for the Brasilia football shoe. And, of course, special collaborations we had, Adidas boxes. You've been to the World of Sports today. We had a kids shoe collection back in the days that was called the World of Sports. So you had for every country had the favorite sport as a kids shoe.
Nice. Wow.
So.
And there we have EQT.
Yeah, old EQT boxes. Or what you can also do is you do a track top with that, with those boxes. You see design inspirations everywhere here in the archive.
The boxes are amazing.
It's hard to collect them because usually that's the first thing you throw away. And there you see some more of our icons, of course, starting with Gazelle and Zambar, as I said, products from Herzo. But of course, in the late 50s, Adidas expanded into France with Horst Dassler, son of Adi. And there, of course, the region they went to is special in shoemaking. The Alsace is known for shoemaking. So they decided to do their own shoes and design new shoes. And you see those 3 icons, the Superstar, Stan Smith, and Forum, were all made in France.
Nice.
Yeah. So, if we talk about the Superstar, you see I have put also a prototype for the Superstar because the Superstar had a predecessor.
Yes,
it
the Super Grip.
Exactly. So it was not the first low-top leather basketball shoe. That was the Super Grip. You see there, and you see also how it was made because you see already like this kind of protection in the front they had the idea with. Because the main reason was that most of the basketball players played in canvas shoes, and they always had injuries at the ankles and especially in the toe area. That was why we wanted to have a leather shoe to give more stability, and also the shell toe with the toe protection. Because when you're stopping on the court, it gives you more protection. And you see also the first Superstar from 1970 still had the canvas stripes to get this connection. No, they were not leather in the beginning, to get this connection. And you see those prototypes were sent back and forth, and stitching was added, the soles changed. So you see, of course, how the iteration from a Super Grip then became a Superstar. And of course, we can also open there. I put a special box over there, the masterpiece. We'll open that later.
On my hand.
Yeah. And then you see, of course, the iteration. That's a Super Stan, but also the Stan Smith is, of course, you see it here. It's made in France.
Yes.
And it was, first of all, it was made for a French tennis player in the mid-60s. And then in 1972, we signed Stan Smith. That's why we had the Staniversary with the man last year. The shoe is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year because it was launched in 73 as a classical white and green a tennis shoe. And then, of course, in the 90s, it became part of the the classics as well. That's a very special Stan Smith. That's a Stan Smith Milo. It's the first shoe made out of mushroom leather.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Of course, you see where future craft goes into those things, and that's the collaboration we have with Stella McCartney, with the first one of the first vegan Stan Smith. And then, of course, if we go over to the Forum, also made in France, also made for basketball, and the main idea was really our former designer Jacques Chassin. He was talking to athletes, like we used to, only the best for the athlete. He was talking to basketball players, and especially the center player had always issues with their ankles and injuries there, because usually they're a little bit bigger and taller, and that's why they needed special stability. And he was watching them taping their feet. And that's, of course, the idea we had in the Forum with the tape,
with the cross.
the crisscross, to give stability, but not to have it on the inside, to have it on the outside, that you can tighten it also. But you see that that is an early version of a Forum.
Yeah, it
because
even says patent.
Patterning, exactly. And it was first used at in LA in '84, and then officially launched in Europe in '85. And there were, of course, additional features like a special sole with, you see the web here on the side, to give kind of a trampoline effect when you're landing. There was a special insole that was a little bit higher in the back to give, when you're landing, to give you a little bit more of cushioning. Especially in your knees. And you see the tongue is a little bit different.
Yeah, the tongue is super different.
Yeah. And also the pivot point on the bottom, if you look at the sole, that was later colored. So the later versions
yes, it's usually red.
Yeah, in the beginning it was not. That's the Super Skate from 1979.
Oh, check this out. Do you know why they started using this type of wavy cushioning on the sides? Because I don't remember seeing them in any other pair of Adidas.
I think it was mainly also for protection reasons, especially in skateboarding. Yeah.
Because they just made they just launched one of these with the sneeze. And it's almost like this. I think it's got a thicker tongue and a little bit more cushioning, but that's it.
Yeah, that's a Super Skate.
Oh. And this is 1979. 1979. Look at that blue. Oh my God.
8000C.
Amazing.
And you see it, if you look to the inside, you see there it's already crumbling. And if it has started, no way to stop it. And you see, if you look at the sole, you see also the sole is special.
Very slippery as well.
Yeah, it's very, very soft leather.
Look at
This
that.
reminds me a little bit of the collaboration with Henderskin, with the Japanese brand. I have a few.
They are very beautiful. The leather is insane.
very
It's like
beautiful
high
leather.
quality.
Yeah.
We have a lot of those also. Like there was a Henderskin NMD as well. So they're like.
Can we see it? No.
Let me see. I think I haven't archived it yet in here. I think it's still outside, so I have to check when we leave the archive.
Hard bottoms.
That
That's
was
the
all.
one I have. Amazing.
How many of these were made?
35.
I think not that many.
Oh,
I think
okay.
100 pairs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you see, we have number 13. So.
¿Es cierto que entraste y le dijiste la del archivo? A ver, enséñame este y este y este y este.
Sí, tú me dijiste, güey, me dijiste, entra y pide lo que quieras.
Sí, güey.
¿no? Pide
Sí,
lo que quieras, lo que se te ocurra, pídelo. Entonces, la neta es que entré, bueno, entras y es un shock, güey, ¿no? Entras y es como de, ¿what? Mames, se te va la onda muy
Se te
cabrón.
va el pedo, güey.
Empiezas a temblar, Frain empezó a llorar, güey, entonces todo fue una catarsis muy chingona. Y ya me explicó unos pares, de hecho, unos que tenía en la mesa ya los quería ver.
Sí.
Y recordé cuando me dijiste eso y tenía en la mente dos pares, güey. Uno que era el de Steve Zissou, que es un Puma, un Adidas Rom, que es como muy como con taquitos abajo, es azul con las franjas amarillas y azul, pero dice Zissou en el lado, güey. Es de la película de Life Aquatic, que no la viste esa película de Life Aquatic, no mames, véanla, van a llorar, güey.
Claro que sí.
Pero
sí,
bueno,
sí.
le pregunté por eso y me dijo, sí, claro, sí lo tengo. Sí lo tengo. Y pasamos a las coordenadas, entró y exactamente el espacio de la caja estaba vacío, güey.
No,
Y me
güey.
dijo, lo siento mucho, aquí debería estar, pero alguien lo movió. Y le dije, güey, órale, choro. Entonces como que se quedó y después le pedí otro que es un Adidas Kegler, que es una edición que hicieron de solo en 100 pares. Está firmado en la madre porque lo estoy subastando y la subasta está como $6,000, güey. Me dijo, güey, tampoco lo tengo. Dije, no puede ser.
No puede ser.
Lloré, me enojé, le dije que para qué me preguntaba qué queríamos. Y ya casi al terminar me dijo, guarda, acabo de recordar algo. Y fue y sacó la caja del Steve Sisu, güey. Me dijo, aquí está el pinche Steve Sisu.
No
mames, güey. O sea que la vencí parcialmente, pero la vencí,
sí.
Pero en general, no mames, la experiencia está muy perra, güey.
Está muy cabrón, güey. La neta está muy cabrón. Güey. ¿Con qué te quedas de esta experiencia, güey? O sea, de todo lo que viste adentro.
Pues ya, o sea, güey, la fotografía del ojo que se me quedó, güey. O sea, lo que me voy a llevar a la tumba, cabrón, esa experiencia de ver pares de hace casi 100 años, güey. Sí. Es algo que no pensé que fuera a ocurrir, güey, ¿sabes? O sea, yo que trato de buscar o encontrar cosas como raras, llegar a esto a la Meca, güey, es como, no mames. Me quedo con el pinche sentimiento cuando ella dijo, a ver, esta es la bóveda. Y la abrió, güey, así el vacío, güey. Como cuando en la feria. Entonces, con eso me quedo, güey.
De toda la experiencia, ¿con qué es lo que te quedas?
Y nosotros tenemos pares favoritos. Los míos son los Micropacer y verlo acá en vivo, tenerlo en tus manos, el principio, el diseño ahí del 84 es increíble. Me quedo con ese par porque tengo amor con ese par directamente.
Háblame de las joyas que pudiste ver, güey.
Y aparte de esas, vi las primeras Hace, las primeras Samba, increíble.
Increíbles.
Los primeros zapatos de fútbol que hizo Adi, impresionantes. Me quedo con eso porque es historia pura en tus manos y en tus pies también. Vos me preguntabas el otro día qué era un clásico. Creo que un clásico a veces no tiene descripción y con esta experiencia te das cuenta porque venís a ver acá lo que es un clásico en realidad. Si tiene tantos años es porque se convirtió y se va a seguir convirtiendo, creo, en un clásico.
Creo que un clásico se define por el legado que tiene. O sea, siento que tiene que pasar cierto tiempo y tiene que estar muy inmerso en la cultura popular para que un clásico se haga llamar clásico, ¿no?
That's an amazing and a tough question because classic is just a timeless piece. Regardless of fashion or trendy, something that longs last. So classic, Superstar is a classic, so no matter what and no matter...
Un número uno, el tiempo, ¿no? El tiempo, que logre perdurar esa barrera del tiempo y que siga siendo actual es algo bien pinche complicado, ¿no? Y creo que justamente donde estamos es como la meca de ese tipo de historias para contar y pues nada, güey, ese que traes, no mames, para mí es un básico clásico por siempre, güey.
You know, you do have classic shoes that existed from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, even now the early 2000s that started within sport and then transcended over to lifestyle. But ultimately, some of those classics start to come to the top of the pile. Many of them become familiar within a lifestyle context, and then some of them even become icons, like the Superstar. Now for us, an icon in general, it's not a word we throw around too often, but definitely the Superstar for us is one of those iconic shoes within the industry. And when I mean within the industry, I'm not just talking about Adidas. So what defines an icon? I mean, ultimately it's something that has withstood the test of time. So there's a timeliness to it. But also, I would say the main thing about it is as soon as it has a certain design feature, it instantly becomes recognizable. So if you see around the world, you know, there's other brands out there that have their versions, and as soon as you put that shell toe on it, it's like, oh, that's their version of a Superstar. Or as soon as we do any crazy iteration of a shoe and we put a shell toe on it, it's like, oh yeah, that's a version of the superstar. And I think ultimately for us, something that is instantly recognizable to the industry or has shaped the industry, that becomes an icon. And for sure, superstar for us is one of those icons within our portfolio.
When you take on a collaboration that's gonna use the classics as a canvas, do you ever consider the fact that it's not only yours, but it belongs to a bunch of subcultures, and that you can't change stuff because they're not gonna like it?
It's definitely a consideration. I think you can't be afraid to try new things at the same time, as long as, like, I mean, these classics are classics for a reason, right? I think, like, again, if it's like the Torsion from ZX, or if it's the classic Tito from Samba or Gazelle, like, we know that these are like intrinsically part of our DNA and why these products are so successful. But I think we can't be afraid to try new things, right? I think regarding specific subcultures and classics, I think, like, if you look at like all of these classics, they don't specifically belong to one subculture, right? Like, it can be, something can be adopted in skate, something can be adopted in kind of like football culture, something can be adopted from the music scene as well. And I think, like, that's why these products kind of stand the testament of time, because it's about the authenticity of the partner to that subculture in that time, i.e. Gucci, ZX, 70s and 80s, but then you look at someone like an Overkill, for example, they're going to have a very different take on ZX, and it's going to be very authentic. You know, it's going to be for that consumer, or like even like someone in the UK. You know, they're going to have a very, very different take on that. It's about being respectful of those subcultures, but again, there's so many stories to tell on these shoes, and that's the beauty of these products, I think. So
could you talk about, like, when, like, let's say when stars align and the storytelling and the material and the color and everything just came together? So
I mean, one that sticks out for me personally, just purely because I was pretty new with the brand, and it was like my first. I mean, I'm going to say something that I worked on. I think just because I'm that narcissistic that I will pick something that I worked on, but I will also pick some other stuff as well. Was maybe the ZX 10,000 with Overkill that we did, the one with 3 shoes in a box. I think how, like, because we were working on the ZX 10,000 with Jacques Chassin, who worked on the original ZX in the 80s, so that was an absolute dream come true to be able to work with him on that product, and Aurélien Longo, who now works on Y3, and Charles Lovett, who now works in Tokyo on, like, the Bape stuff, so kind of, like, that was an amazing time. And I think, like, I remember a specific memory of myself and Charles being in the factory in China. Normally how you do it is you walk into a room and then kind of like all the shoes that you're working on are kind of on a table, much like this. And then we walk in on our first day, we're super tired. It's obviously we've flown from here, and then our eyes are both drawn to this shoe. And then for the next like 3 hours, we're like children, like just taking pictures of it from different angles, putting it on, just try like, and that was like a really amazing collaboration. And like we initially wanted to do two pairs, but the whole story of like ZX in '89, like there was a campaign called I Want, I Can. So we decided to do If I Want, I Can.
I mean, I think the reality is some of the shoes that we have today will, the likelihood that they will be here in another 20 years is definitely, it's a reality, you know. I think if they've been here for 50 years, what's another 20 years? I think the important point that we would have, how do we keep it relevant, and why would people continue to come back to it? And that's what I mentioned, being very aware of how the different generations are evolving and what their values are. I mean, obviously at the moment, if you look at Gen Z, and that's very much the audience we are talking to, they're looking back to the 2000s. Well, for many of us, the 2000s were not vintage, but for them it was vintage. And there's definitely a little bit of a cycle there. So if we were to say 20 years from now, what we would be doing is, okay, what shoes were hot 20 years ago and how do we bring them into today? So I think in some cases the icons will be there, but the reality is these all started at performance shoes. So we need to be looking at what are those performance shoes that are being delivered into the market today, and which ones have the ability to be relevant again in the future. I would say Ultra Boost is going to be part of the conversation, you know, and from a running lens, not necessarily from a classic lens. Versions of these shoes will probably stand the test of time, or at least features of those shoes. But I think it's always interesting for us to have a dynamic portfolio, because if you look at this, you know, not just these three, but also what's behind us, they all have an iconic design feature that does stand the test of time. So you have a shell toe, you have a T-toe, you have iconic simplicity, you then have this idea of straps and features and playfulness. So it's not to say the shoe in its iconic form is going to be the one in 20 years from now, but it's definitely an iteration of it. And those values remain true today as they were 20 years ago. I mean, back when the Superstar 35-year anniversary happened, it was all about the expression of streetwear through creativity. Creativity is a value that is, you know, that just continues through every generation. But the question is, how does the creativity change? Creativity remixed with the icons, and then, you know, whatever the anchor point is today. So I would say that Home of Classics will definitely evolve. Some shoes will remain, but what is happening in performance the last 10 years is definitely something that we are keeping an eye on. Super important for us, because at one point they are the archive of the future.
Este es el final de una experiencia increíble para nosotros, que espero también haya sido increíble igual para ustedes. Hay muchas cosas que nos han impresionado de este viaje, pero lo realmente importante es materializar de lo que siempre estamos hablando de manera abstracta, y cómo después cada una de las cosas que tratamos de transmitirles es una realidad. La banda tiene perspectivas diferentes, puede trabajar de manera diferente en un ambiente totalmente distinto, pero todos tenemos cosas que son totalmente en común. Nos gusta trabajar, nos gusta encontrar cosas nuevas y hablar de lo que realmente nos apasiona. Después de las pláticas del día de hoy nos queda muchísimo más claro, por ejemplo, cómo se hace una colaboración, pero también cómo es que lo que realmente importa es el empeño y amor que le pones a tu trabajo. Y sobre todo, cómo una sola persona no puede hacerlo todo. Se necesita un equipo de cabrones siempre detrás de él, igual que nosotros. Este viaje no lo hicimos solos. Si voltea la cámara para allá, vas a ver todo el crew que estaba rolando con nosotros para todos lados. Y cada uno de ellos nos enseñó un pedacito de cómo es vivir Adidas en su propio territorio, güey. Aun cuando somos mexicanos todos, chilenos, argentinos, brasileños, todos estamos en la misma sintonía. Y como lo dijo Pablo, cada uno de nosotros atesorando su propio museo personal. Queremos agradecer un montón, primero a todos ustedes por acompañarnos en este viaje, y después absolutamente a toda la gente detrás de este proyecto. A Eli y al equipo de comms de Adidas, a todos nuestros nuevos hermanos que acabamos de hacer en este viaje, y sobre todo y muy especialmente a toda la gente que sigue impulsando la cultura alrededor del mundo. Y aunque parezca que todo es muy distinto, en realidad es bastante igual. Y eso es lo más chingón de los sneakers, que nos ayudan a borrar esas barreras culturales y de repente nos dejan a todos hablando en un mismo idioma. Yo soy su homie el Poxte desde Nuremberg y nos vemos en otro lado. Peace.